Hello, and today I want to show you how to put together the Bloody Hatchet SVG design from Simply Crafty SVGs. So this is just all the pieces to it. So these have to go in order. Now you can't see it, but I didn't cut them out on this, but there's an order in which you need to put these together in, and they're numbered. So you can cut out the numbers, they'll cut out by default, or you could use a pen to mark them. It's up to you. But you want to make sure they're in order. So this is for the handle. So we're just going to begin. This is for the top of the handle piece. So you're going to gently fold on the scores. And I'm using solid score lines, which is an option. You can do that on most of the machines. Silhouette's capable, and with the score wheel now, it's a little bit easier for 3D designs if you're using the Maker. The score tool on the Cricut doesn't score as well as it should, I think. So we're just going to glue these tabs underneath that top portion of the handle end. So just making sure you're matching up the edge of that top panel with the tab folds. And then you can apply pressure inside against the table just to make sure they're good and secure. For the last two, I just held the last two until the end. And I know the lighting's a little bit off here, but I was trying to move it around to help. Go ahead and flip that last tab inward. And you'll match that top tab, top tab, and you can just reach in. And then the side tab, match up that edge to close it up. And then we'll put it aside. So for this, again, it needs to be in order. You need to start with number 1, and then 2, 3. So you want to glue them in order so the handle looks correct when you have it together. So I'll start with the number 1 piece. So just assume I'm doing this in order, and again, it'll be numbered on one of the tabs. I'm going to add glue to 2 of the tabs. You can just do it to the top one, but basically what we're doing is anchoring it. So you want to carefully line that up, making sure that that top fold of that tab on the right piece is aligned with the fold in the left piece. And you want to carefully align that right panel edge to the tab fold and applying pressure. So you can go ahead and continue to do the same all the way down. So this is going to be the way we attach all the pieces. You can start with doing 1 piece at a time and then find out how many you can do. Usually 2 to 3 you could do at a time. One thing I do when I hazard you and not worry too much about, but sometimes I'm using a textured paper, which is from American Crafts. But what I find happens with these sort of designs that are long, sometimes they start to kind of twist a little bit. So do you know that's going to happen a little bit? But it doesn't take away from the design. One thing you'll want to have handy is a longer utensil, if you have it, like a wooden chopstick. Because as it gets smaller, as it closes up, the very last piece will probably want something to reach in there and just apply a little pressure against the tabs if you can't get your fingers all the way down there. So you'll see the same thing. So you can just continue to watch me glue these panels on until we get to the last panel, and then I'll come back. So now we're going to work on the last piece. So we need to just connect the tabs to close it up. So we're going to glue a little bit on the top first, and then go from the top and then go from the bottom. And this way we'll be able to reach in there easier. I do have a blunt tool that I'll be using to apply pressure against the tabs, in addition to me lining them up with my fingers. So you just kind of want to bend it over, fold it over, I should say, and then align the edges with the tab folds as we have been doing. It should be easy enough to get to the 2 tabs with your fingers. But for the third one, I'm using a tool and I'm kind of reaching in to use it for pressure on the back side as I align it. So I didn't put enough glue on this tab. That's the downfall for me with the quick drying glue. Sometimes I'm not fast enough. So I'm just applying pressure, and just to make it stick enough so I can get in there, get it in place so I can get a little bit more pressure behind it. Something like if you watch my videos a lot, you know I use wooden chopsticks. For some reason, I'm not working in a regular location for this particular video, so I didn't have one handy. Not as this video. I have one now. So anyways, but there's always a blunt tool or something that doesn't have a sharp tip on it that you can reach in to apply pressure. It just has to be a little bit longer and doesn't cause any issues to the inside of the tabs or your project. So to me, the last part of putting things together is always the hardest. So now we're going to just fold over those bottom tabs and we'll close it up like that. So this is more of a decorative. It's not really obviously a gift piece, but go ahead and just add. So there's no place to put a gift. That's what I'm saying in this one. This is kind of one of those things where you can put it as part of a Halloween decor, or maybe use as a part of your costume. So I'm just going to go around here and just go around, and I'm just applying pressure and lining up each edge one at a time, making sure that it's lined up with those tabs, and then just kind of gently rub. When you get it in place, it's good to rub against the table. And then you see it's kind of skewed, a little bit churned, but it got churned a little bit at one point. So now I'm going to use dark brown chalk ink to kind of give it a little bit more of a worn look. And also what's nice about this, I mean, I'm not saying there's any mistakes with crafting, because I don't believe that, but it kind of gives it it'll hide the edges. Let's say you get a little leakage, glue leakage that shows. Some glue is worse than others, but you could actually just kind of ink around the edge, and you're providing, it's looking like a distress look, but also it's hiding any imperfections you may have. So I was trying to get that it's kind of a used hatchet. So I love the chalk inks and chalks. So here's a cardstock. I don't have it listed because it's kind of an old paper pack I got somewhere. I'm not quite sure. But these things are sized differently. So if you see how it curves when it's closed, it curves down further on the bottom. So make sure you have it situated correctly, else the top won't fit to the bottom, vice versa. See, I just flipped it over there. And just the glue, so you know what I'm using is tacky glue. I flipped it over correctly now. And you can see, just double check that you have the right side. It'll line up. And you can see it's just slightly different size. It's really slight, but it's enough to throw your design off. How do I know? I accidentally did it because I wasn't paying attention. So again, that bottom part of the hatchet part goes down a little further than the top. So as easy as this looks, there's a curve to it, and there are challenges with the tabs, so just so you know. So we're just going to add glue to that first one side of where the tip's going to go. So you want to line up the end of the tip to that fold a large piece as close as possible, and then you're going to align that edge to the tab fold. And then just make sure you have that good and secure before you move on. That's where it's going to pull up. If you have problems, it's going to pull up at the tip on both the bottom and top. I had to make modifications to the tabs a few times. I made it longer because the shorter tabs didn't work very well. They just kept on popping up. And honestly, I'm not using a great paper. It's a cardstock, but it's a specialty cardstock that looked distressed to start with. So anyways, I didn't have to do any of the inking or anything. So I glued the 2 tabs on one side, and then I didn't continue. So now we're going to do, so we can get in, we're going to just gently start from the tip going to the other side to align that. You can reach in gently. You could use a tool as well, but this is going to be the hardest part always on both sides. It's the tip. Once you get that tip secure, and take the time to do it, because if you don't do it, it's going to pull up on you. If you move too quick, it pulled up on me several times, but I wanted a curved look, so I wasn't willing to sacrifice on the design. So again, we want to align that up. The second side's going to be a little bit harder than the first. Patience with yourself and take the time to do it. Don't rush and do a bunch of tabs at once, because it's going to come apart. And then I'm using a tool to get additional pressure behind it. And like I said, you don't have to buy that tool. Just go get a wooden chopstick from your takeout place. Panda, if you're in the US, they have pandas all over the place. Saving you money. So you can reach in on this one to apply pressure. And also I use the tool, blunt tool inside to help apply pressure on the top and bottom at the same time. I want to get that good and secure. So now you have the top of it done. Well, almost, I should say. The other side, we have to do one more tab. So we started and we did one side, we put 2 tabs, and then we switched to the other side and did the 3 tabs, and then finished it up with that one last tab. And this is, depending on whether you're right or left-handed, one side's going to be easier for you. You kind of always want to push from the tip to the back, because if you do that with that panel, then it'll line up that fold in the back properly. So now, before we do anything else, we want to put that top piece in. So it's the tabs, you're going to fold the tabs in, and they're going to go through, and we're going to glue the tabs to the underside of this panel. We're doing this so it's easier, so we don't want to close it up yet, so it's easier for us to do it. So we're going to fold the tabs back, so we want to get them ready to fold back from when you glue them. Then we're going to fold them in again, because we need them to be in to insert them. And we're just going to glue one tab first. I couldn't make this tab any larger because of the size of the opening, so you want to just carefully reach in, and I'm pushing it against the top of that panel while I'm pushing from the top. That makes sense. Here, that's what it looks like. And then I always do the opposite side first to actually get it in place. Whenever I'm dealing with this kind of polygonal shape, I find it's best to glue one side for anchoring and then the opposite side to keep it in place for me, so the rest of the tabs aren't so bad. So now that those 2 are glued, we're going to just add glue to the back 2 tabs. Kind of push it, if you have to gently push it through to make sure that the fold is matching to that opening edge. And then I'm just folding them in. You can't see it, but I'm folding them up and then applying pressure, and you can see where I'm applying the pressure from the top. And that's exactly where I'm folding, and there, that's what those 2 look like, and then we'll finish it up with the last 2. And that's exactly how we're going to attach the larger handle. So after this, we get this set in place. We're going to put that bottom curved section on, and then attach the bottom handle before we close it up. So now we're going to do the bottom piece the same way that we did the top. It's just a slightly more curved section. It's not can't think of the word. It is a different curve. I lose my words sometimes. So again, we're going to anchor that first one, lining up that edge to the tab fold, and making sure you start from the tip to the back when you're gluing these panels on to the tabs. So kind of rolling your finger along that tab. So we glued 2 tabs. And believe it or not, this is sped up just a little bit, the video, so you know that I am waiting longer than it seems. So make sure it's good and dry, else it'll pop right off on you, especially if you're using a thick cardstock. I just pulled out a view there. So this one, second one's always going to be harder. You can't reach in, so you kind of have to rub it along gently. Get it in place and rub it, and this one you want to take a little bit longer. And you can see I'm not quite covered. I didn't put enough glue at the edge there. So I'm going to add glue to you saw it, the first tab. You can see I added just a little bit more glue, and then we'll glue it to the second tab. And I'm just trying to get it lined up first. I can't use any tool or anything until I get that edge lined up. Once I get it kind of stuck there so it's in place where I want it, then I can put the blunt tool inside and use that for pressure from inside. And that one, it was pulling up a little bit too. Like I said, this second one's always going to be harder. And then we'll go ahead and glue that last tab. And it gets easier when you get to the end because you can actually get your fingers in towards the back side and apply pressure. It's just those front 2 are difficult. And then we'll close it up with that last tab. Sometimes the design looks simpler than it is, and this one kind of looks simple, but because of the curves of how I wanted the blade to actual curve, it made it a little bit more difficult. So we can't close it quite yet because we need to put the handle in, just like we did the top. So we're going to do the same. You want to fold, it's going to sit in like that, and the handle, you can see how I have the handle situated. Make sure you have it situated properly when you're gluing it. So I'm going to fold them down again. That's just giving them flexibility, so when we have to pull them back inside, it's easy to pull back and glue to the inside panel. So again, before you glue that first tab, just make sure that you have the handle situated properly. So it's taking me a second to get it in there. Because it's a little bit heavier, it's a little bit difficult, but you can see that's the way the handle has to situate. And I'm going to apply pressure to that tab on the inside and outside. Then, as I did with the other one, make sure you do the opposite tab. Kind of lift. It's easier to glue from this angle because it gets a little bit closed now. Once we have all those other panels, the whole thing, it gets a little bit more difficult. I didn't put enough glue on it. It's not hard, it just requires patience, and I could only make the tabs as long as they were due to the size of the ratchet blade head thing, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure there's a technical term for it, but I do not know what that is. And then I'm just going to reach in with my applicator, my glue applicator, and add glue to those back tabs. You can't see it, but you know what we did with the first ones. You have to do your best. If you don't have a fine tip glue applicator and you want to do this, you could use a cheap little skinny paintbrush to put glue on the paintbrush and then paint it back there. There's other ways. It's just the way that I do it. And you can see I missed there's a little gap there, so I was just trying to fix it. I'd rather show you where sometimes I go awry. And this particular cardstock I was using is kind of a cheap cardstock, so it was bowing a little bit on the back because of it didn't like the glue. The glue was kind of soaking up the glue. That's why this was not very good cardstock. You won't see a link below. It's a real cheap cardstock for the head, but I just like the pattern. And then see how it's kind of bowing down. That's just because of my the glue. So you want to just add glue. Now I'm going to show you, I'm not going to tuck in the tab, but because it was bowing, it didn't really attach very well, but you could just glue it over. Nobody's going to really care. So you could, instead of gluing on the inside, you can glue it on the outside. And that's it finished. We just have to add I'll call it the bloody panel. You see how it goes on. You can just match it up to the edges, fold it over. You'll probably see a little white, but I'm going to cover that with a little chalk ink. So go ahead and just add glue to it. Just make sure you have it oriented properly. Then once you add glue lightly to the insides, you can line it up and just lightly apply pressure on both sides, because you know it can bow in, so you just want to just keep on rubbing it until it's secured. And that's about it. You can see it's a good size for if you had a costume, or it's just fun. Then I took some black chalk ink. The color I used on the handle was dark brown, and this one's black, so just to tie it all together, get rid of, you know, rough up some of those edges. And that'll finish it off. I hope you enjoyed this project. I had fun making it, and I thank you so much for watching.